This World Cup, one team has done something no other team in the field has managed, won every single match without needing extra time. 6 matches, 6 wins, 0 overtime periods, 0 penalty shootouts. France have navigated the largest World Cup in history without once needing the additional 30 minutes. That is not just a statistical curiosity. It is a window into what France have built and how long it took them to build it. The answer involves a decision made more than 50 years ago, a government that believed football was worth investing in, and a generation of players who grew up inside the system that decision created. This is not a story about one player or one manager or one exceptional year. It is a story about what happens when a country decides to treat football as infrastructure. Understanding it matters because France are not done. They are in the semifinals. They could be 3 matches from their 3rd World Cup in a generation. And the team they will face, and potentially the final after that, will benefit from understanding what they are actually up against. This episode is about how France built the machine, not about whether it wins on a specific Saturday. The results will come when they come. The structure that produces them took decades and is worth understanding on its own terms. Start with a number that tells the whole story in miniature. 9 forwards named in France's squad for this tournament. 9 forwards in a 26-man squad is not normal. Most national teams name 4, perhaps 5, with genuine starting ambitions. France named 9 players for whom, at almost any other national team in this tournament, a starting place would be unquestioned. Dembélé, who won the Ballon d'Or the previous autumn. Olise, who was among the best players in the Premier League. Doué, whose age at the time of his first senior cap made him one of the youngest ever called up. And then, ahead of all of them in most formations, the team's captain, 27 years old, 19 World Cup goals across 3 tournaments, closing in on the all-time record held by only one other active player. 9 forwards competing for at most 3 starting positions and perhaps 2 substitute spots. The players who did not start against Morocco would, at almost every other team in this tournament, have been automatic starters. That depth, specifically in attacking positions, is the single most visible reason France's 6 matches have looked the way they have. When the first-choice attacker is not at his best on a given day, the replacement is also world-class. The opponent cannot plan for one individual because there are too many. But depth of this kind does not appear by accident. It does not emerge because one country happened to produce several exceptional players in the same generation. Other countries have also produced exceptional players in recent generations. They did not end up with 9 World Cup caliber forwards in a 26-man squad. The reason France did is structural, and it predates every player currently in that squad by decades. In the early 1970s, France had not won a major international trophy in their history. Their national team was inconsistent, occasionally talented, and frequently disappointing at the decisive moment. The Football Federation, backed by the French government, decided that the solution was not to find better players. It was to produce them systematically. 16 centers de formation were established across the country, the first opening in 1974. The main national training center followed in the early 1980s in a town outside Paris. The system was built on one premise: talent exists everywhere, but it requires infrastructure to develop. Without that infrastructure, it is wasted. Recruitment began early and reached across the entire country and its overseas departments. The centers looked for players from 8 and 9 years old and offered structured coaching free of cost. The government backed the program explicitly, viewing success in football as connected to national identity and to demonstrating the benefits of investment in public development structures. By the 1990s, the system had produced enough players to change what the national team looked like. The 1998 squad, which won the World Cup on home soil, was described as representing the full diversity of modern France in a way no previous generation had. The coach at the time said the trophy belonged to every amateur club and academy that had contributed to developing the players who won it. He was not being modest, he was being accurate. The system did not stop after 1998. It kept running. It produced a generation of players for 2018. It kept running. It is now producing the players who were not quite old enough to start in 2022 but are ready in 2026. Warren Zaïre-Emery, who plays alongside Kanté in France's midfield this tournament, is 20 years old. Kanté is 34, 15 years between them, both products of the same system. That coexistence of experience and youth across the squad is not accidental. It is what a well-maintained pipeline looks like when it has been running long enough. The Paris region specifically has been identified by academy directors as one of the highest density areas for young footballing talent in the world, alongside São Paulo. The reason is primarily cultural access. Football is embedded in daily life, facilities are available, and competition for young players starts early and is intense. Not every country can replicate that cultural density, but the infrastructure that converts it into World Cup squads is a policy choice, not an accident of geography. Several countries have high concentrations of talented young players and do not convert them into consistent international success at this level. France's choice, sustained over 50 years and through multiple changes of government, has been to build and maintain the system regardless of what the national team results were in any given year. That is the structural advantage that is hardest to replicate. Not the money, not the talent, but the consistency across time. Most countries operate on a shorter cycle. Success leads to investment. Failure leads to reform. Reform leads to a new direction before the previous direction has had time to produce results. France has had bad tournaments. Their 2002 exit in the group stage with a squad containing some of the best players in the world at the time is a frequently cited example. In 2002, they did not dismantle the system. They examined why the tournament had gone wrong and kept the infrastructure running. The current manager has been in his role since 2012. He is one of 3 people in football history to have won the World Cup as both a player and a manager. He has guided France to 3 finals across back-to-back cycles, winning 1 and losing 1 in the final minutes. This tournament is his last before stepping down. Whatever happens in the remainder of this tournament, the record of consistent finals-level performance across 14 years is one of the most significant managerial achievements in international football. The question the next manager inherits is whether the pipeline continues to produce at this level or whether the current generation represents an unusual peak. Based on the names currently in development within French football, most analysts do not expect a dramatic drop-off. Several players who did not qualify for this squad are considered potential starters in 2030. That expectation, if accurate, would mean France has successfully institutionalized the capacity to compete at the highest level, rather than depending on a single generation. No country has done that indefinitely. The 1998 and 2018 generations have been separated by a generation of relative underperformance at major tournaments. The honest version of this story includes that gap because it means France's consistency is not automatic. It is maintained imperfectly over time. The systems that produced the current squad were not visible to most observers while they were running. They became visible only when the output arrived in the form of 27-year-old captains with 19 World Cup goals. Which brings this episode back to where it started. 6 matches, 6 wins, no overtime. That record is not a coincidence. It is what the output of a well-maintained system looks like when the inputs were right and the environment favored it. It is also, by its nature, not permanent. Systems this consistent still have bad days. The tournament is not over. France's most difficult remaining matches are likely to be harder than any of their first 6. The teams still in the bracket at this stage are not the group stage opponents. Whether the squad's depth advantage holds under sustained pressure from another elite opponent is the specific question the remaining matches will answer. The structural story does not change based on the result. France have either already won enough or will win more. The pipeline runs either way. What makes France interesting is not that they are always the best team on any given day, it is that they are almost always in contention to be across a span of years that other nations have found difficult to sustain. Brazil sustained that level for longer. Germany sustained it for a generation. Spain sustained it across a specific decade. France's current run is within that company. What sets their current model apart in addition to talent is the diversity of the attack. 9 forwards means 9 different problems for any opposition defensive plan. No defensive structure can be optimally calibrated for all 9 simultaneously. The coach can choose which version of the attack to present on any given day based on the specific weaknesses of the opponent. That tactical flexibility is itself a product of the pipeline. You can only have 9 world-class forwards if you have been developing them systematically for long enough that 9 arrived at the same time. Most national teams get 2, perhaps 3, exceptional forwards in a generation. France currently has a problem that is the envy of every other coaching staff in this tournament: too many. Whether this specific combination of players, under this specific manager, wins this specific World Cup is the question the next 10 days will answer. Whether France will still be competing at this level at the next World Cup is almost a separate question, and one the pipeline currently suggests an optimistic answer to. What is not a separate question, and what this episode has tried to make visible, is why France are here. They are here because of a decision made before most of their current players were born. A decision about infrastructure, about access, about treating the development of young footballers as something worth funding over many decades rather than reacting to results one tournament at a time. France's 6 clean wins at this World Cup are the current output of that decision. However the tournament ends, the input side of the equation is already preparing the next generation. That is how France keeps doing this. And that, in the end, is the most important thing this tournament's most complete team has to show anyone watching. It is not a magic trick. It is a policy choice sustained over time that happens to look like one. The game continues, the semis approach, and somewhere in the French football system, an 8-year-old is already training for 2034. That is what 50 years of infrastructure looks like from the outside. A team that seems to always have another player ready, another option available, another year of dominance ahead. And that is why, whatever the result of the remaining matches, the structural story of France at this World Cup will outlast the final score. The bracket ends on July 19th. The pipeline does not. And that distinction between what ends and what continues is the whole point of building something that outlasts any single tournament. France are in the semifinals. The pipeline is already running the next generation. Both things are true at once.